When it came to the company's 25th anniversary celebration, I decided to dress up and attend the event with my husband. However, Logan scolded me for my idea. "What's the point of a housewife like you being there? Tonight all the big shots from the business world will be there and you don't even speak French. Don't embarrass me for God's sake." Reluctantly, I had no choice but to give up the idea. The next day when I turned on the TV, I saw the company's gala from the night before being broadcast. Logan, impeccably dressed in a suit, looked like he was having the best time of his life, a wide smile on his face. By his side was a young woman, impeccably styled, fluently conversing with the business tycoons in French on his behalf. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, "Chairman of Mattel Group attends 25th anniversary event with his wife." I couldn't help but stare at the bold "wife" in the headline. A wave of sadness washed over me and I couldn't help but mock myself in silence. She's the wife. Then what am I? Few days before, while tidying up in my study, I accidentally came across the invitation to the company's anniversary event. It read, "We sincerely invite the chairman and his wife to attend." It hit me all at once. Somehow I had been a housewife for 20 years without even realizing it. I thought about putting the invitation away, but then I hesitated. Now that the kids were grown and working and the household chores had reduced significantly, maybe it was time for me to find something for myself to do. Mattel Group was a company Logan and I had founded together. But after I became pregnant, I stepped down from the management team and became a full-time housewife. Taking care of the children, attending to the aging in-laws, and dealing with the household chores were no less taxing than a full-time job. I had little time to think about anything outside the family, so I never bothered with the company's affairs. Now, after all these years had passed, the company's 25th anniversary event seemed like a good opportunity to reconnect with the outside world. I decided to attend with Logan. I immediately rummaged through my closet, but after searching for a while I couldn't find anything suitable. Then I realized why. Beautiful clothes were often inconvenient to move in. For the sake of doing housework and taking care of the kids, those pretty, elegant outfits had long been cast aside. Over time, my closet had nothing but old, worn-out clothes. 2 decades as a housewife had left me looking unkempt, and I had completely forgotten what it felt like to dress up. Fortunately, there was still time. I hurried to the mall, picked out a few new outfits, put on my favorite pearl necklace, and made sure to do my makeup. As the saying goes, clothes make the person. Even at 50, after a little effort, I still felt like I was doing pretty all right. When I returned home after getting dressed up, I happened to run into Logan, who was preparing to leave. He saw me and seemed startled, as though he had seen a monster. He took a step back and scolded me. "What's this? A woman your age should stop dressing so gaudily. It's really wired and comfortable for me to see you like this." His words pierced my heart like needles, and my chest felt like it had a heavy stone sitting on it. I mumbled, "It's not bad, is it? You used to praise me when I wore dresses." "Dresses are fine, but you're not looking at your age. No curves, no shape. No matter how pretty the clothes are, they won't help." Logan took a long, scrutinizing look at me and then said in shock, "You even put on heavy lipstick. You already have so many wrinkles, and now with makeup on, you look like a ghost. It's terrifying. Wipe it off." I hesitated, not moving. "But I want to attend tonight's anniversary event. This outfit is perfect for it." Logan didn't hesitate for a second. "What do you want to go for? Tonight it's all the big names in the business world. You're just a housewife and you can't even speak French. You'll embarrass me." I wanted to argue, but when I opened my mouth I found I couldn't say a single strong word. For 20 years, besides housework and caring for the kids, I had seemed to have learned nothing else. And because of my family's financial situation, I couldn't afford the tuition for further education back then, so my qualifications were indeed low. In Logan's social circle, I was practically invisible, a nobody. When Logan had persuaded me to become a full-time homemaker, he promised me that I wouldn't lack anything. But now here I was, unable to even attend the anniversary event with him. What had 20 years as a housewife really given me? I stood there, utterly confused, unable to find the answer. I could only watch as Logan left for the event alone, leaving me standing in a room filled with silence. The incident from the night before was like a stone thrown into a lake, creating a brief ripple before everything returned to stillness. I continued with my isolated life as a housewife. The next day, after finishing all the housework, I turned on the financial channel as usual. By chance, I saw the news about the company's gala from the night before. Logan, dressed sharply in his suit, looked like he was on cloud nine with a young, beautifully dressed woman by his side. The young woman was speaking fluent French, acting as his translator with the business elite. The two of them were so in sync, like an old married couple. The headline below the footage boldly read, Mattel Group President attends 25th anniversary event with his wife. I stared at the bold wife. A wave of sorrow washed over me and I couldn't help but mock myself. She's the wife. What does that make me? I stared at Logan on the screen. The Logan in the news seemed like a stranger to me. The way he smiled at the woman beside him was so gentle, a smile I hadn't seen on his face in so long that it felt like a heavy blow to my chest. A dull ache spreading through me. A flood of doubts, disappointment and anger rushed in. Yesterday, he had warned me not to attend the company event. Yet now he was allowing another woman to stand by his side. This woman was young, confident and spoke fluent French, clearly far more impressive than I, the tired, worn-out housewife. Just then Logan pushed the door open and walked in. He didn't seem to notice the change in my expression. Calmly, he took off his coat and hung it on the rack, then sat on the couch as if nothing was different. The anger inside me rose. Unable to be contained, I pointed at the news on the screen and snapped, "Aren't you going to explain?" Logan blinked, glancing at the news before he smirked and said, "The media's just making things up. She's my secretary. We had a few foreign clients at the event and she's well educated, having studied abroad. It makes perfect sense for her to help me host the clients." I didn't buy his story. "Does hosting clients require you to hold her arms so intimately?" Logan waved me off. "Oh, please wake up. It's the 21st century. It's completely normal for men and women to attend events and walk arm in arm. Besides, Miss Eleanor is a businesswoman. Holding hands is just part of the job. She's very professional. Don't act like an ignorant shrew and slander her." His tone was so casual, as though it was all perfectly reasonable, and he made it clear he thought I, as a housewife, had no right to compare to Eleanor. Did he even realize what he was saying? I was his wife, not some subordinate he could insult at will. The worst part was that I was starting to believe his excuse. I knew that fake news was rampant these days. Mattel was a leading company, so it wouldn't surprise me if journalists made up stories for clicks. Besides, all they did was hold hands. If I threw a fit over this, I'd be the one looking petty. I had no choice but to swallow my dissatisfaction in silence. Yet deep down the unease never left me. Something told me this wasn't as simple as it seemed. It hadn't been long before my unease and suspect on to be confirmed. A few days later, after taking out the trash, I was heading back home when I saw Logan's car parked outside. Under the dim streetlight, I could clearly see him leaning against the car, a young woman nestled in his arms. They were kissing passionately, lost in each other. The intimacy between them, their breaths mingling in the cold night air, was striking and sharp, as if everything around me had come to a sudden jarring halt. The woman kissing my husband. I knew her. It was Eleanor, the same woman who had taken my place at the company anniversary event just a few days ago. A sharp pain stabbed at my chest, as if something inside me had crumbled. The air around me felt heavy and cold, almost suffocating. Eleanor was the first to notice me. She seemed startled and immediately pulled away from Logan's embrace. Trembling, she hid behind him as if I were some kind of monster, clutching Logan's sleeve and whispering, "Mr. Walker." Logan's gaze flicked over to me. There was no panic in his eyes, only a calm indifference, as if nothing was wrong. "Go ahead and leave," he told Eleanor in a voice so steady, you'd think nothing had happened. Eleanor didn't hesitate, turning quickly and walking away. As she passed me, her previously innocent expression disappeared, replaced with a haughty look, before she flashed a smug smile and walked off. I stood frozen, my hands and feet icy cold, a burning anger rising from my chest. "What were you just doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling. Logan gave me a cold look, his expression full of disdain. "We were just sharing a friendly kiss, showing affection between friends. It's nothing to make a fuss about." I was furious, my eyes red. "Logan, I'm not stupid." Logan's patience seemed to snap. "So what, you're accusing me of cheating now?" Eleanor has been a top student since childhood, got into a prestigious school on her own merits, and she's excellent at her job. Plus, she's beautiful, has a good personality and countless admirers. His tone grew sharp, almost mocking. "You think she'd be a mistress?" I cut to the point. "Being a mistress has nothing to do with education." Logan slammed his hand on the table, pointing at me in warning. Eleanor is a high-ranking executive I hired with a good salary. She's going to help me take the company public. Don't spread rumors about her behind her back. If you make her angry and she quits, I won't forgive you. He gave me a disdainful glance. You're old enough to be Eleanor's mother. You can't even understand how hard she works, and yet you're always trying to compete with younger women. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? My heart sank into the depths of despair that I remembered when I was pregnant. Uncertain whether to retreat to being a stay-at-home mom, Logan had comforted me so gently. What are you worrying about? We're both working hard for this family. I'm just the one working outside, you take care of the home. How could I ever complain about you? I should be the one worrying about you, resenting me for being a workaholic and neglecting the family. Those sweet words echoed in my mind, but now the cold reality hit me like a slap in the face. All the sacrifices I had made stepping back from my career to take care of the home, those years had been so laughable that in the end, my husband no longer thought I was good enough for him, that I suddenly felt so tired, and I didn't want to keep arguing with the stranger standing in front of me. Logan, let's get a divorce. Logan seemed to find it hilarious, laughing mockingly. You really have no idea, do you? Now you're just following the trend. Divorce? You're a 50-year-old woman. Who would want you after me? Do you really think you're still young? My voice was cold, devoid of any warmth. It doesn't matter if no one wants me. It's still better than dying in this loveless house. Logan's smile immediately froze on his face. He didn't dare to laugh at me anymore. Suddenly it hit him. I wasn't joking this time. I was serious. After that night I was determined to get a divorce. Logan tried to persuade me several times, but when he realized he couldn't change my mind, he called our son Owen back home to talk me out of it. Owen had just graduated from college this year and was working at Logan's company. He rented an apartment near the office to make it easier for work, so he wasn't living at home. The moment he walked in, he rushed to my room and asked, "Mom, are you really going to divorce Dad?" I didn't answer, continuing to pack my things, preparing to move out. Owen saw the suitcases scattered around the room and knew I was serious. He anxiously said, "Mom, you can't be this selfish. If you get a divorce, what am I supposed to do? I just joined the company, my position isn't stable yet. How can I take over Dad's business in the future?" I let out a cold laugh. He was definitely Logan's son, cold-blooded and self-centered, just like his father. No matter what happened, the only thing they cared about was their own interest, and I was so unlucky to have met these kinds of people. It's me getting a divorce, not me cheating. Don't worry, you'll always be Logan's son. Just hold on to his leg tightly, the wealth and power will be yours. Mom, that's not what I meant, Owen quickly explained. Seeing that I wasn't responding, he grew more frustrated, scratching his head, then blurted out, "You're going through with this divorce now, aren't you just giving Eleanor what she wants?" I stopped what I was doing, staring at Owen. The incident had happened so suddenly that I didn't have time to tell him about Logan's affair, but now he knew about Eleanor. In a cold voice I asked, "You knew your dad was cheating this whole time? And you've been helping him hide it from me?" Owen instantly regretted what he said and quickly covered his mouth. He didn't dare look me in the eye as he spoke quietly. "What good would it do to tell you? Are you really going to divorce him now? A woman of 50, what can you even do after a divorce?" I threw the clothes I was holding on the floor in frustration and shouted, "If it weren't you forcing me to be a stay-at-home mom when I was pregnant, I would have been an executive at the company by now. What does 50 have to do with it? I may be getting older, but I'm not dead. 50 is the age to still make my mark. I have hands and feet. As long as I have confidence, starting a business again isn't impossible." Owen angrily slammed his fist on his leg and said, "If you divorce, you'll have nothing. How will you even start a company? I may not know much, but I know that the law says assets are divided equally in a divorce. I've been married to your dad for 30 years, how could I have nothing to start with?" Owen, with a pained look, said, "The premise of dividing assets is that your dad has money. If his bank account is empty, you won't get a penny. Ever since he got together with Eleanor, he's been secretly transferring assets." He continued to explain, "Eleanor's a Harvard graduate. She's extremely skilled. Your dad's shares in the company have already been transferred to an offshore company with her help. His savings and properties have either been moved overseas or are registered under your grandparents' names. Even his salary is now just $1 a month. If you divorce him now, you won't get a thing. Worse, you might even inherit his debts. I felt as if my world was crashing down, hit by a series of terms and information that I couldn't even begin to process. But I didn't sign any loan papers. How could I inherit his debt? Owen slammed his fist on the table, exasperated. When a couple divorces, their debts are split too. Your dad's been borrowing money to expand the business for years. Those debts will follow you after the divorce. I froze. My hands unconsciously clenched the fabric of my clothes, my fingertips going white. My throat felt like something was blocking it, and I couldn't make a sound. I had thought that after 30 years of marriage, even if we couldn't grow old together, we would at least part on good terms. But now I would get nothing from the divorce and would even have to bear his debts. Such a ruthless calculation. Logan, you're so heartless. I quickly grabbed Owen's arm and asked, if that shameless pair is going this far to guard against me, they won't let you off either. Owen, what's going on at the company? Owen's face visibly fell. I've been stuck in a dead-end position for a year now. My heart went cold. Logan, that bastard. For that woman outside, he didn't even care about his own son anymore. Mom, don't worry about me. What matters now is you. Please don't get mad and bring up the divorce again. If you do, you'll have nothing. I let go of Owen and looked at him calmly, my voice cold. Retreating won't bring me respect. Owen, if your dad can be this ruthless, there's no way I can stay in this house any longer. Owen became anxious. Are you really planning to divorce with all his debts? I said firmly, I'm getting a divorce. And I'll take what's mine. Owen was speechless, shaking his head. You're so stubborn. You've been out of society for 20 years and you have no education. How can you fight against those two? I smiled faintly. Don't forget, Mattel Group was not founded by your dad alone. I was there to build it too. Back then, the US economy was entering a new golden era, and everyone was thinking about how to start a business and get rich. I wasn't any different. But I understood that working for someone else my whole life would only allow me to scrape by. The only way to truly control my own destiny was to become my own boss. So, with my family's support, I opened a small shop in my hometown selling handmade wine that I made myself. My grandmother had once been a well-known winemaker in the area, highly skilled. It was said that she had once provided wine for aristocratic banquets. Unfortunately, due to the changing times, the success she once had didn't carry over to the next generation. By the time it was my mother's turn, the wealth and reputation the family had built were long gone, squandered by my gambling and alcoholic grandfather. The only thing that remained was my grandmother's secret recipe for wine, passed down through the generations. I always remembered my grandmother's teachings. The grapes used as raw materials had to be the best quality, down to the specific origin and ripeness of the grapes. Every step of the process had to be done by hand with no shortcuts. With this dedication and the truly great taste, my little shop quickly became a success. At that time, Logan was responsible for delivering fresh grapes and other fruits to my shop. He was tall, handsome, and charming, always able to make people laugh with his humor. We developed feelings for each other over time, and soon we were together and got married. After the marriage, Logan joined my business and we ran the wine shop together. Yes, the business grew. We expanded the shop and even started a small factory, hoping to sell our products nationwide. In the early stages of the business, I handled everything personally, from the smallest to the largest tasks. But after I got pregnant and gave birth, Logan insisted that I should focus on taking care of the family, saying, "The child needs a mother." At first I hesitated. After all, I had built this company from the ground up. It was like my child. How could I let it go so easily? But Logan impatiently told me, "The company is bigger now and the decisions are more complicated. You don't have a business degree, you don't understand management. Staying here will only cause problems. You should stay home and enjoy a comfortable life." I felt a sting in my heart. So what if I didn't have a high education? In those days, the people who truly built great companies didn't rely on degrees but on real skills and hard work. But in the end, I chose to step back and focus on the family. By that time, the company had already gone through the toughest stages of startup. Our family's unique wine recipe became more and more famous, and business was booming. We quickly became an industry leader, with annual profits reaching millions of dollars. In truth, the company's success had nothing to do with Logan. Logan thought that after being a housewife for 20 years, I would be out of touch with the times and easy to manipulate because of my low education. He was wrong. I would make him understand. Even if a lion grows old, it's still a lion, Not a sheep that can be taken advantage of. I, Catherine, built this empire with my own hands and I could tear it down just as easily. I began to set my revenge plan in motion. After asking Owen to investigate something for me, I started to play along with Logan. On the surface, I returned to the busy, mundane routine of family life. I stopped mentioning the divorce. I acted as if I were still taking care of the family just like before. Logan had been giving me $10,000 a month as living expenses, but after paying the housekeeper's salary, daily food costs, and the caregivers for his elderly parents, there was hardly anything left. I didn't have many material desires and had been willing to save wherever I could for the family, so I never really saw it as a problem before. But now I realized if I wasn't spending his money, he'd just end up spending it on other women. It was time for me to start living for myself, step by step reclaiming everything I had lost over the past 20 years. Since the last argument about divorce, Logan still outwardly denies his affair, but his actions reveal his guilt. So when I asked him to raise my living expenses to $50,000, Logan didn't dare to oppose my request and agreed immediately. With the money in hand, the first thing I did was free myself from the heavy housework. In the past, I had an old-fashioned mindset, thinking that I should do everything I could around the house myself and that hiring too many housekeepers was a waste of money. But now, I see that hiring more help just lightens my load. So, I added the extra housekeeping costs to Logan's account without hesitation. He didn't object, though he insisted that I still had to cook the meals. For the past 20 years, Logan had been highly critical of me, but the one thing he always praised was my cooking. Logan is very picky about food. Over the years, I had put a lot of effort into perfecting my cooking to satisfy his taste. After all this time, my culinary skills were on par with Michelin star chefs. One day, I came across a news article stating that private chefs for celebrities can earn around $500,000 a year. But here I was, providing Logan with top-tier customized service as his wife. And I wasn't paid a single cent for it. I thought this might be one of the reasons why Logan didn't want a divorce. He knew that if we divorced, he'd probably never find another fool like me. Someone who offered all this for free and with dedication. Now even the servants didn't do everything. There were specialized housekeepers for cleaning, specialized cooks and nannies for the kids. Each additional task meant a salary increase. How many housewives are trapped in the so-called marriage cage, providing customized services without pay, only to be criticized by their husbands for not working, not making money and not keeping up with the times? To avoid disrupting my plan, I naturally agreed to his request. As usual, I served him 3 meals a day without deliberately making the food unappetizing. Logan knew my ability, so he wouldn't dare to complain if I made a mistake. It would only make him suspicious. However, I did mix a bit of Cookie's stool into his favorite dishes. Just to clarify, Cookie is our family dog. I didn't put in too much, just enough for the scent of the food to cover it. I also added extra dog food to Cookie's bowl as a reward for all its hard work recently. From behind me I heard Logan's voice, puzzled. There's something strange in today's pasta. I paused while pouring the dog food. I stood up, pretending to be angry, and said, "If you don't like my cooking, then don't eat it." I made a move to take the plate and throw it away. Logan quickly stopped me, saying, "No, I didn't mean it that way. Don't be mad." He smiled and finished the plate of pasta. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Logan had been living in wealth for so long that he had forgotten the most basic principle of life. Never offend the person who cooks your food. Otherwise, you'll never know what special ingredients might be added to your meal. This little game with Cookie's stool continued for 3 months. Eventually, someone couldn't sit still any longer. One day, I received a text message from an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Mrs. Walker. I'm sorry to bother you. This is Eleanor. Are you free recently? I'd like to meet and talk." A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. The fish had finally taken the bait. I arranged to meet Eleanor at a cafe near the office. I arrived on time, but she didn't show up until half an hour later. As soon as she sat down, she smiled elegantly and said, "Sorry I'm late. There's so much going on at the company. I'm swamped every day. Unlike you, a housewife who just sits around drinking tea and has all the free time in the world." I was struck by the assumption. Not only Logan but even outsiders thought that being a housewife meant idleness, that it was somehow inferior to having a real job. In the past I might have cared about such remarks, but now I couldn't care less. Being a housewife is a profession too, just like white-collar workers, blue-collar workers, or any other job that keeps society functioning. There's no hierarchy of professions. What really has a hierarchy are people who look down on others through tinted glasses. I calmly replied. Eleanor, you must have another reason for asking me out, right? Well, a wife finds her husband kissing another woman at the doorstep and doesn't cause a scene. You don't seriously think I was the one who seduced him, do you? Eleanor said with a smug grin. I followed her words without missing a beat. Go on. Eleanor chuckled with pride. That night it was actually Mr. Walker who initiated things. He was drunk and insisted I take him home. When we got to the house, he suddenly pulled me into a hug and kissed me wildly, saying how much he liked me. I wanted to push him away, but then I saw how passionate Mr. Walker was about me, she said, adjusting her hair and feigning shyness. I suddenly felt sorry for him. A CEO of a company getting so worked up over a kiss. His wife must not take care of him at all. What kind of emotional abuse has he been suffering at home? Despite her bragging tone, my expression remained calm. My fingers gently traced the surface of the table as if her words were nothing more than trivial conversation. Finally, I spoke calmly. So what you're saying is Logan likes you and I should step aside and make way for you? Eleanor puffed out her chest. Of course. I looked up at her for the first time, studying her carefully. She was dressed head to toe in designer labels, the epitome of a rich girl's style. With arms crossed and back straight, her obsidian-like eyes radiated vitality and ambition. Young, beautiful and highly educated, fresh from studying abroad. It was no surprise that Logan was interested in her. But given Logan's wealth, there were plenty of women like her. Why her? As I looked into Eleanor's eyes, I could clearly see the ambition she was trying to hide. Suddenly, everything clicked. Logan's taste hadn't changed one bit. This girl was a mirror image of who I had been when I was younger. When we first married, Logan was handsome, a graduate of Northwestern University with professor parents. I was just a high school graduate and my parents ran a small coffee shop. His background was far superior to mine. Logically, I had no business being with him. I had asked him back then what he liked about me when he confessed. He had smiled, ruffled my hair, and his eyes had sparkled like they were filled with stars. He had said he liked the boundless ambition in my eyes. And yet, this same man, after we married, urged me to abandon that ambition and focus on raising children and managing the household for the sake of our family. Wasn't that hypocrisy? He married a shining woman, then shackled her with children and housework. And when she grew older, he discarded her to find a younger version. I couldn't help but laugh softly. This time I wouldn't let anything hold me back. I would live for myself. Eleanor continued. As a housewife, not only can you not help him with his work, but you also can't satisfy him in other areas. You might as well leave him now before you become the joke of the town. I placed my cup down and smiled slightly. It seems like you're quite confident in your abilities. She scoffed. Of course. I'm young, highly educated and skilled. What Mr. Walker needs is someone like me. You, on the other hand, a divorce would be good for you too. Everyone would be better off. I replied coolly. Wouldn't that be a bit of a hardship for you? You'd be working at the company during the day and sleeping with your boss at night. You'd essentially be working 2 jobs. Wonder if you can collect 2 salaries. Eleanor slammed her hand on the table in frustration, but remembering the real reason she was here, trying to force me to initiate the divorce, she calmed down and said, "This is none of your concern." Seeing that the moment had come, I took out a voice recorder and placed it on the table. I've recorded our conversation just now. Eleanor's eyes widened in surprise and she sneered, "You dare to threaten me? You're truly foolish. You think just because you post this recording online, you can manipulate public opinion and use social media to bully me, thereby keeping your position as the wife." I smiled, undeterred by her words. "No, you're completely wrong. I don't need to post it online. I only need to show it to one person." Eleanor's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "Who?" I slid a photo across the table to her. She picked it up and the color drained from her face. Her hand trembled as she held it. I smiled victoriously. "So how about now? Are you willing to accept my threat?" Eleanor hesitated, her eyes flickering with inner conflict. But in the end she gritted her teeth and agreed. "What do you want me to do?" I answered directly, "I need you to convince Logan to sign the divorce agreement I've prepared." Eleanor stared at me in shock, a fleeting glimmer of excitement flashing across her face. "You want a divorce?" She must have assumed that I pulled out the recorder to threaten her into leaving Logan. I gave a meaningful smile. You know why I wasn't angry when you started provoking me earlier? Logan's 50 now. He's no good in that area anymore. He can only fool young girls like you. A woman like me with stronger needs has long wanted to kick him out. Eleanor gritted her teeth. You really are something. I grabbed my bag, preparing to leave. Before I went, I looked down at Eleanor from above. Thanks for the compliment. Oh, and by the way, you can pay for the coffee today. Thanks for the treat. With that, I left, walking away with the poise of a victor. Behind me, Eleanor was fuming in rage. With Eleanor now on my side, I prepared the divorce agreement and officially presented it to Logan. This time, with Eleanor whispering in his ear, Logan didn't put up any resistance and signed the divorce papers without hesitation. Logan had always been clever when it came to his finances. His decision to transfer assets was a clear sign that he didn't want me to walk away from the divorce with his money. I knew that simply pushing for more wouldn't work out in my favor. So, after some careful consideration, I settled on a compromise. A $1.5 million alimony settlement. It wasn't a large sum, certainly not enough to make Logan flinch. But it was enough for me to start over. The rest I would take back piece by piece. After the divorce, I quickly moved out of the house I had lived in for so many years and rented a small place. I was determined to use the $1.5 million as seed money to start my own business again. This time I would take it slow and steady. No rushing into factories or large-scale companies. I would begin as I had before, with a small shop selling homemade wine, building my reputation before expanding. When Owen found out I planned to open a shop, he was immediately against it. But after realizing he couldn't change my mind, he grudgingly quit his job at Mattel and offered to help me. I had been hesitant. Divorce was a personal matter and I didn't want to drag Owen into it. Though I had plans for my business, I couldn't guarantee success anytime soon, and I didn't want Owen to suffer along with me. But to my surprise, Owen insisted, rather than going back to Eleanor and working under her, I'd rather work for you. At least I'll be able to truly help. With that, he took over the task of washing vegetables, diving into the work with determination. Watching Owen work so hard warmed my heart. My years as a housewife weren't without their value. At least I had raised Owen well and he was willing to support me now. With his help, the shop quickly came together. As I had expected, when you put your heart into your product, the customers will see it. Using my grandmother's secret recipe and carefully sourced ingredients, along with Owen's clever ideas to promote the store, business took off. By the time we opened each day, there was already a long line outside the door. Within an hour, the freshly made wine was sold out. Many customers had to leave disappointed, only to come back earlier the next day to try again. As word of our product spread, I discussed with Owen the idea of expanding our reach. We hired a professional team to help design our branding, and Owen set up a few online stores to increase pre-orders. We also decided to hire more people to help increase production without compromising quality. As we ramped up production, sales skyrocketed, and with it, the workload. I was busier than ever. Every day in the shop felt like running a marathon, and there were times when I felt like I couldn't catch my breath. But it was different now. When I used to be busy at home, I felt a sense of emptiness, like I was stuck in a life with no future. Now, I was earning money with my own hard work, doing what I loved, and dreaming of a future that was entirely mine to shape. I could finally announce to the world that 50 wasn't old at all. With persistence, anyone could build something from nothing. And this was just the beginning. The business had been booming for over a year now. That night, after going over the accounts with Owen, he looked at me in surprise and said, "Mom, our monthly net profit is already $30,000. I didn't expect selling homemade wine could be this profitable." I corrected him, "It's our family's homemade wine that's making the money. Have you seen how many other places around our vineyard have opened up selling homemade wine? Their businesses aren't doing well at all." "Mom, I've always wondered, aren't the recipes for the homemade wine the same as Dad's company? How come yours is selling so well? Did you change the recipe?" he asked. "It's not that I changed the recipe, it's your dad who changed it. Once people get rich, they tend to get carried away. The success of Mattel Group was built on our family's homemade wine recipe. But Logan believed it was his management skills that made the company strong. Later, to make the financial reports look better, he cut costs by replacing the high-quality ingredients I had painstakingly sourced with cheaper alternatives. When I found out and confronted him about it, he said, "It's not like the customers will taste the difference. Why bother using such good ingredients? But what I know for sure is that sincerity is what matters most in winemaking. Capitalism has no limits when it comes to making money. Today they'll swap in cheaper grapes to cut costs. Tomorrow they'll use grapes that are past their prime. Not only is this bad for others, but it's also bad for themselves. Then Logan grew even more ambitious. He wasn't satisfied with traditional production and sales anymore. His new dream was to take the company public and make a huge profit. The reason I had Eleanor persuade him to divorce me was that once the company went public, he wouldn't be able to hide his assets anymore, and I'd be entitled to nearly half of the company's market value. That's when Logan made the decision to divorce me. Before the divorce papers were even finalized, I heard that Mattel Group's sales had dropped year after year. His arrogance had eventually led to his downfall. But it turned out that his failure worked in my favor. If he hadn't messed up so badly, my wine business wouldn't have taken off so quickly after I left him. As I found my footing again, life got better and better. One day, Owen came running to me excited. "Mom, I heard Dad recently fired all the senior employees at the company." Frowned. Why did he fire them? Did they do something wrong? They didn't do anything wrong. Dad's obsessed with taking the company public, but the sales have been dropping every year. He couldn't figure out why, so to make the financial reports look better, he had no choice but to lay people off. Owen continued, analyzing the situation. "These senior employees have been with the company from the beginning. They're high-paid, low-education people that Dad has never liked. This was the perfect chance for him to get rid of them." I couldn't help but laugh at Logan's naivety. These employees were the first ones I personally hired when Mattel was just starting out. They were capable, driven people who had stuck with Mattel through thick and thin. They had witnessed all the ups and downs, and they were the backbone of the company now. Cutting them was like cutting into the company's very heart. I turned to Owen and said, "You should have their numbers, right? Call them up and tell them to come work for us tomorrow." Owen blinked his big innocent eyes and asked, "Mom, what do you want to do?" I lifted my chin confidently. "I'm building my own trusted team. We're going big now." After more than a year of operation, the brand I created for homemade wine had gained considerable recognition. The customer flow kept increasing, and the small workshop could no longer meet the growing demand. I needed to partner with a factory, which meant starting a company, hiring more employees, and expanding operations. I had known Mattel's old employees for many years, and they were all hardworking, skilled people. Taking them directly from Logan's hands meant I didn't even need to train them. It was truly a stroke of luck. Logan thought he could manipulate me into leaving with nothing, but I was determined to make sure he never recovered from this. I would take back everything I had lost, all on my own. When Owen realized my ambitions, he leapt with excitement, shouting, "Long live Mom! Let's take down Mattel." When the old employees received my invitation, they didn't hesitate for a second and immediately joined us. Most of them were in their 40s with mortgages to pay and children to support. They had expected to work under Logan until retirement, only to suddenly face midlife layoffs. My invitation was like a lifeline. On top of that, I had always treated them fairly and had helped them both openly and discreetly over the years. In return, they were determined to work hard and help the company succeed. I named the new company Heritage. It wasn't just about making money. It was about bringing the fine wine passed down by my grandmother to every corner of this country. As the new company grew, so did my business. Meanwhile, Logan, in his rush to take Mattel public, made sweeping changes to their target customer base and downgraded the overall product quality, slowly losing the trust of their customers. The company's performance started to decline. On the other hand, under my leadership, Heritage flourished, quickly capturing the market Logan had lost. Finally, one day, Heritage surpassed Mattel in every aspect of performance. I was thrilled and distributed the majority of the profits as year-end bonuses to the employees. The old employees were overwhelmed with emotion, grabbing me by the arms and tearfully saying, "Boss, Mr. Walker's decision to divorce you was the biggest mistake of his life. Eleanor may be young, pretty, and highly educated, but what's the use? You made big money and thought to share it with us, while that woman kept trying to lower our salaries. She's really too much." "You know," they continued, "it doesn't matter how high your education is. What truly matters is having a kind heart." When I divorced Logan, my plan was always to bring down his company. Over the past year, I've naturally been keeping a close eye on his situation. Right after our divorce, Logan married Eleanor. Post-marriage, she became even more active in offering advice to help Logan take Mattel public. However, Mattel's performance had been declining for years, and Eleanor's suggestions could never address the fundamental issues. Meanwhile, my company had been eyeing their market and gradually taking over what once belonged to Mattel. With external pressure from my company and internal mismanagement, Logan's dream of going public was completely shattered. If only Logan had listened to my earlier advice and brought back the original recipe, maybe his company would have had a chance. But Logan had always belittled me, never once considering my suggestions. As Mattel's performance continued to worsen, Logan resorted to drastic measures, including mass layoffs. Eventually, even Eleanor was sent home to become a housewife. I can't imagine she was happy serving a 50-year-old man, especially after she had been secretly involved with a British boyfriend while married to Logan. The last I heard of her, she had embezzled a significant sum of money and fled abroad. With the loss of cash flow and unpaid debts, Mattel quickly filed for bankruptcy. Logan was so enraged by this that he had a heart attack and is now still unconscious in the hospital. I knew exactly where Eleanor would go, so I instructed Owen to send her wedding photos with Logan to those locations. It was the perfect blow. The effect was immediate. Within a few days I received an overseas call. As soon as I answered, Eleanor's frantic voice came through the line. "You damn woman. You're going to hell for this." Feigning confusion, I replied, "What's wrong, Eleanor? Did your boyfriend not like your wedding photos? Stop pretending. We had an agreement. I helped you convince Logan to sign the divorce papers, and you promised you'd keep it a secret. But you told Noah everything. You broke your word and now you'll pay." I shrugged nonchalantly. "Eleanor, I didn't break the agreement. I never promised not to send Noah anything. I only agreed not to give him the recording. What I sent were just your wedding photos. You liar. I'm going to kill you." If Eleanor had been in front of me, she would have lunged at me immediately. After all, I had just destroyed her only remaining escape route. Eleanor had been secretly seeing a British boyfriend while married to Logan. From the start, she never truly cared about Logan. She only wanted to get what she could from him, then run. And now that Logan was incapacitated, she had taken the money and gone off to find true love. I paused for a moment, then added with a touch of provocation, "By the way, I've already recorded this call. If you continue to threaten my safety after we end this call, you'll probably receive a summons from the police." On the other end, she immediately hung up, clearly terrified. Owen, who had been listening in, gave me a thumbs up. "When you asked me to investigate whether Eleanor was seeing someone else, I was skeptical. I thought, how could she be fooling around with my dad? But sure enough, you were right. As expected of you, Mom." "How did you know?" "I didn't know anything special. I'm just a woman, so I understand how women think," I replied. Men tend to be overconfident, always assuming a younger woman is after them for their personality, not their money. What they fail to see is that the younger women are only interested in what they can get from them financially. In reality, when a young woman faces a man in his 50s, she instinctively distances herself from him. What she's really after is the financial support he can provide, not love. Logan dug his own grave. The clock on the wall struck 8 in the morning, and Owen, having finished preparing everything, turned to me and said, "It's getting late, Mom. You should get going to your meeting." I nodded gently, gazing out the window as the morning light poured in, washing away the shadows of the past. Those old matters could fade away with the wind. There were far more important things ahead of me. Today was another beautiful day.